All right, I'll call this meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, let's start with the minutes of the regular board meeting September 25th. Has everybody had a chance to go through it? Any corrections?
Yes.
Go ahead, David.
Future agenda items. Superintendent evaluation wasn't, and our board stipend tied to attendance at meetings.
Yep, I would concur. Is there anything else? All right, and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting September 25th with those adjustments. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Then we'll move on to our general fund vouchers. 17180-116 through 17180-142. Wire transfers 75071 through 75112. And activity fund vouchers 2925 through 2945. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the general fund vouchers as read. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Public comments? None. We'll move on to new business. Review of the guaranteed and viable curriculum, professional development.
Okay. So if you turn in your packets to the first item, professional learning communities at work and guaranteed and viable curriculum. Just wanted to share with the board kind of the direction that we're headed. Our last in-service, teacher in-service, we brought a gal in by the name of Chris Stratton. She's a consultant at CISA, and she presented on a guaranteed and viable curriculum. And with the district, we've talked with the staff. We developed a leadership committee team that we met with to share with them the direction that we're going, get some feedback from them, and then also ask them to kind of be our eyes and ears and informal, kind of get informal information to bring back to the committee. So what this is Chris came, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I do have some highlighted items that I want to touch on. So on page 4, Chris talked about kind of the essential outcomes. So we're looking at in your board packet that I emailed you, there was a link to this DPI website with the standards. So we broke the teaching staff up into groups, and then they looked at the different standards in their curricular areas, and then we talked about just the importance of what this means, having a guaranteed and viable curriculum, because that's kind of a buzzword in education throughout probably the last five years. It's kind of been used quite a bit, but to actually talk about what it means to have a guaranteed curriculum and a viable curriculum. So as a staff, we talked about that, and then we broke down, or we looked at each standard, and then she talked through, Ms. Stratton talked everybody through kind of the process of what that means to look at the standards and then look at what's called the essential standards, kind of the have-tos, the must-knows for students. We talked about why it's important, and one big thing is you look like, if you look at just like a family like my own, whether they're coming into the district or a family that's leaving the district, it's not only good for our district, but it's a must for statewide. If you know, unfortunately we have transient families, and then there's also reasons like my own for professional reasons where families move. But when kids go into a certain grade, we're guaranteeing, and this isn't just us, but every district in the state, we're guaranteeing, teachers are guaranteeing that the essential standards, the must-knows are being taught. So that way when they're coming in or leaving, they're guaranteed to get the same curriculum delivered to them no matter what grade. And then if you just look internally, no matter what teacher they're in, they're getting the same curriculum delivered. The viable, oh, go ahead.
Is that in the state or the nation?
That's Wisconsin. I mean, other states are doing it as well with the national standards, but Wisconsin, this is definitely has made a big push for it. And the viable piece is really what scares people, because it's an overwhelming process to look at all these standards at each grade level, and you have this anxiety of how the heck am I supposed to get all of these. How am I supposed to meet all these standards in only a 180-day period? And you probably, you take off an extra 10 days for different outings and this and that. And that's where you really break down. When you're going through the standards, you look at the essential ones, like the big ones that, as a team, you want to hit those for sure. And then we talked about developing a timeline for the 2016-17 for just our district, like what that means. I'm sorry, for 17-18, what that looks like for our district. And we're not going to try to rush through this process. And we try to communicate to the teaching staff that this isn't just a one-year thing. Like this is, we're going to have a couple of years that we're going to do this, but this is also something that's going to be you do every year with your curriculum. And then if you skip to page 6, the number one factor affecting student achievement is a guaranteed and viable curriculum. And some would argue that the teacher, I think the teacher is arguably, I think those are 1 and 2 variables that are the number 1 and 2 variables that impact student achievement. And then you skip a little bit ahead to page 9. This kind of breaks it down as far as what that really means. And like I said, no matter who's teaching it, whether it's internally or externally, it shouldn't matter what teacher is teaching the curriculum. The essential standards are being hit. And the creativity is still there. Teachers are still given the opportunity to have the creativity piece, and you don't lose your personality, in my opinion, within the classroom, but you're just hitting those must hit standards. And a lot of good conversations came during that training, I feel like. And it is going to be a lot of work. I do feel like it's going to be a lot of work, and you have your growing pains along the process, but I think it's a good process. And then the viable piece, like I said, just that anxiety piece, but I think from an admin perspective, we've talked and we've made it a priority that we feel it's important, but we're also hearing the teachers, and we want to make sure that we give them time to do it and don't rush this process. Page 10 just talks about the 4 big questions. What do we want students to know and do? How do we know if they've learned it? What do we do if they don't learn it? And then what do we do when they've already learned it? Kind of the big questions with it. And this process is going to turn into some more things. Like once we're done unpacking the standards and looking at all the standards within the classroom, then we're going to move towards common assessments and working through that, where you have assessments that are based off of the standards. And I do think a lot of good conversation, having seen this and having been a part of it, I think a lot of good comes from that as well. And I think that gives teachers the ability to also develop tiered assessments. So you're not only differentiating your instruction in the classroom, but you're also differentiating your assessments. So if you have different leveled learners, you can have assessments that look different, but they're hitting the same standards. So you're assessing the same thing. But your higher level kids, they may dig into it a little bit more, but that the same concept is being taught and the same concept is being learned by because you know what the essential standards are. And then on page 18, we don't need to go through this, but she talked about how to figure out and determine if a standard is an essential standard, rather than just kind of sitting in a circle and saying, yeah, I think it is, no, I don't think it is. But she gave the staff a set of questions to kind of go through each standard and ask each other, and then talk about it, so you have more of an educated decision being made rather than just a best guess of whether or not the standard was essential or not. And then the next page, like I said, this leads to your common assessments, and they're all based off of the standards. And we've heard the term, or maybe you've heard the term, teaching to the test or teaching to the standards. And that's not what we're not doing. We're not teaching to the test, but we are looking at the standards and then basing our curriculum off of it, and then also eventually our assessments. And I think to try to wrap everybody's head around that curriculum isn't just a textbook, but a textbook is just part of the picture of your curriculum, and you can be pulling in other things. And I think this is going to go nicely with the direction that we're headed as far as technology. We also met as a technology committee last week, I believe, and we're really going to be pushing the one-to-one for next year, and not replacing curriculum with technology, but enhancing it or supplementing the curriculum. So this was a huge beginning of the process. Was during our last in-service. We're also bringing Chris in for a half day on our next half day in-service to kind of finish up her part of it. And then as an admin team and as a district, we're going to be working through the standards together. You guys have any questions?
So this is Common Core, is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
Can you explain that, how that's different than when we went to school?
Yeah, so right now, depending on the subject, some standards, it really depends on the subject that we're in. Like even Mr. Gillis and Mr. Peterson helped me out with this, but is it science and social studies that were still kind of up in the air with the day Chris came? I mean, they're basing theirs off the national standards.
Common Core is only math and English language arts, reading, not science, not social studies, not anything else. So
Right now,
and
the state's in
it's the Wisconsin state standards is what they're really called, but they're based off of.
And if you look on that link that I sent you guys on the DPI website, it lays out which ones are the Common Core, and then it also has the standard ones in there, so you can look at if you guys were interested in, like if you wanted to look at the science national standards. That link was in the DPI website as well.
the state's in revision right now on the standards.
And then even, for example, like the physical education, there's state and national standards. So we even, as a physical education department, they were talking about which standards to use, and ultimately decided to go with the national standards. And pretty similar when you look at them, but.
Some of the standards, some of the Wisconsin state standards, if you, one of those first slides in the presentation was, do you remember where you were in 1994? Because some of those standards came out in 1994. Some of the state standards in some content areas, so there's constant revision.
So how is that different? How is this Common Core different than what we grew up with? I mean, we're all beyond we were before 1994.
Yeah, I think the Common Core, they recognized that there was a discrepancy between districts as far as what was being taught, kind of like what I talked about with, families moving, and even just guaranteeing that if you're in one in, Clear Lake, Wisconsin, you're going to be getting the same thing in, Madison Public School. So it was kind of birthed out of that concept as far as making sure that the same things are being taught at grade level.
Or in Alabama or Oregon or Kentucky, that if you're a fourth grader, there's a reasonable expectation that you're going to learn similar things no matter where you grow up. That there's some consistency.
So Common Core was a national.
What's that?
Common Core is a national deal.
Yes.
Well, it was adopted by, I think, most of the states.
Yeah.
But and then some rescinded, some kept it and called it a different name. But it's, when we went to school, we didn't really use learning standards, Dave. That was, that was, the teacher kind of directed everything, and that was kind of where the standards movement came from, is to say, well, if you go to school in this school versus this school, to have a somewhat of an expectation that you would be learning the same things.
Any other questions?
And then I would like to say, just after the in-service, I surveyed the staff just to get some kind of quick feedback, and 97% felt like they gained something from it, and about 97% said it's going to have impact student outcomes, and The biggest thing I took from the survey was, asking kind of what the teachers need, what the next steps kind of to take, and the common theme by far was time. They just are asking for time, and I think it's going to be conducive to the changes that we've made with the in-services being a full day, so we'll be allowed to give that to them. And we're not rushing the process. I know a lot of districts try to kind of cram it through, and if this takes more than a year, we're fine with it, because I do think it's not a 1 or a 2 year process. It's going to be something that you continually use and develop as you're teaching, or at least you should be, within your classroom. You should be revisiting those and looking at the standards to see what's being taught. So I think overall, a huge majority of the staff were, I don't want to use the term excited about it, because it's not exactly an exciting topic, but agreed that it was in the best interest of the students, and agreed that moving forward, it's going to impact student outcomes.
So does it have to be done like in certain years, or just it's elective, or?
No, I would say most districts have already gone through this. I say that with, not having surveyed districts, but it was probably the last 5 years it's kind of been a buzz term, the guaranteed and viable curriculum, and have gone through unpacking the standards. So I feel like it's a good time for Clear Lake District to do it. I think it's a much needed kind of process to go through.
It's kind of preparing us as well to standardize grading practices and
Yep.
assessment practices and things that are kind of other buzzwords. This is kind of key groundwork to make that happen.
I think in 2010, 11, we were doing that too when the new standards came out. They were kind of thrown down at us and said, here, implement these really fast. And then it was overwhelming, and the new standards were there's a lot of them. They're really lengthy, they're different, more rigorous, and along with new assessments and other new evaluation systems going on in Wisconsin all at the same time was just kind of a perfect storm. And I think a lot of districts are like us too, and listening to Chris talk, they're going back and trying to, okay, so there's 80-some English language arts standards at a certain grade level. Okay, how can we narrow it down to the most core essential power standards? And that's what we're trying to do too, is to the viable part, like Mr. Ernst said, that you can guarantee that the teachers can actually get through these most important ones rather than teaching 88 of them in a really shallow way.
And like Mr. Gillis alluded to, this will change our grading practices as far as, standardized grades. It changes it from, as a parent asking what grade they got to really asking like what determined that grade, and not really caring if it's an A or an F or a B, but why is it that, and what led to that grade, I think is the most, the more important questions you're asking. So I do think, not to get ahead of ourselves, because it's down the road, but I think, as a district, we're headed in a really good direction with this stuff.
Very good. Thanks, Josh.
Yep.
Then we'll move on to our review of Department of Public Instruction licensure update.
Okay, so you guys asked for an update on the licensure stuff. Unfortunately, I don't have all the answers yet, and DPI does not either. But the documents that I sent you, this is different than what's in your board packet. I felt like this kind of laid it out a little bit more clear, rather than I gave you the link to the DPI site, so you guys can go to that link, and it's continually updating. But the big items that have changed in the state is due to the governor's budget. DPI has made some changes. The lifetime licensures are really what was the big thing that came out of it. In my personal opinion, I think it's a Band-Aid for what the bigger issue and the bigger problem is with public education right now in Wisconsin. I think, looking at, we've talked about attracting and retaining teachers, but I think the bigger issue in Wisconsin is we just don't have people entering the profession, as many as years past. So it's going to get, I believe it's going to get more and more difficult. We've seen it just in this last year with interviews, and I've shared with you guys, as far as different licensures and what people have or don't have. that are applying for jobs. I think that's only going to get more and more difficult to attract highly qualified educators. So the two big things: the life licensure. So everyone right now that was in a professional licensure, I think that's the term, got moved into a lifetime licensure. So like myself, for example, my superintendent's license and principal license and teaching license all moved to a lifetime licensure because I was done with my PDP work. If you weren't done with your PDP work, then you move into a provisional license, now it's called, and then there's a 3-year period, really, they're saying 6-semester period, where you have to work towards, but they're not really telling us what that means. Once you've done that successfully, been in a district for 6 semesters or 3 years, and been successful, then you get moved into a lifetime licensure. There's some of the license themselves have changed. I'm not going to go into that, but just kind of, I don't have all the information in front of me, but just for example, I think social studies is a good example. Rather than having specific license, it's just kind of one general license. They've also changed some of the license to generalize them a little bit more, so it's more of a kind of the what used to be like the 112 rather than grades 1 through 9 and then grades 7 through 12. And then they have there's no more emergency license. They're calling them license with stipulations. And this is just, I'm not even going to pretend to know because DPI doesn't know, and we've been asking a lot of questions as far as what that's going to look like. But individuals can get, if they have an undergrad, they can get license, and some of those decisions are going to be put at the local level. So ultimately, they're saying it's going to be superintendent's decisions to bring to the board. And then the PDP process is going away. So that's the license renewal process that you could do every 3 years or every 5 years. You had to do show growth in your area, and then you'd get 3 PDP reviewers, so 3 individuals that could review that information and then sign off of it, and then it would go to the state to be approved. So there's no more PDP renewal process, because obviously it's once you have a lifetime licensure, you don't need to renew. And that's about it. Do you guys have any questions on the license?
So with the lifetime license, it would seem to me, and I'm probably asking a question I know the answer to, but it would seem to me that it disincentivizes continual professional development and even the possibility, not here necessarily, but just in general, of districts not investing as much into teacher professional development because there's no requirement.
Yeah. And I do think it's I personally, I think it's sad, because we are educators. I mean, we're in the education field, so to not, I won't put my personal opinion in there, but yeah, you're right.
So how does this affect also further licensure or masters, incentivizing to get your masters? Where does that all play in? So
that's going to kind of it's going to be similar to what has been in the past. I mean, it's going to be more on the local level, decisions to be made, whether you have things in place to give teachers incentives to get their masters. So currently, I've communicated to the staff that we're not going to change practices with with credits. Obviously, PDPs are no more, but with credits, they'll still receive with every 8 credits the $400 increase, which I know isn't a ton, but it is something. But I do think there is going to be kind of K-12 and then higher education, some of that going on. So all of those decisions are going to be, as far as incentives, are going to be based at the local level. And then I recently did get a hold of DPI They have like an emergency hotline for superintendents, but they cut, I think, 50% of their staff, so it's not really an emergency hotline anymore. It's pretty tough to get a hold of them, but they're very good about getting back to you. And we have questions hanging out there about, if you have a teacher, like if Angie, Mrs. Funk, was in the 4th year of her PDP and that 5th year was the renewal year for her, like what does that mean? Does she get kind of grandfathered into the end of the provisional year? Does she have to start over at the 3? And a lot of those questions they don't have yet, and they're hashing out. So they've told us to kind of hang tight and weather the storm until they have answers. But they seem to be scrambling as well with the. I think they had 20 individuals on the licensure team, and 10 of them are not back. So 50% cut.
Is that where they're seeing the savings in this budget?
I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, what is the budgetary savings on doing this? Is it just the staffing for relicensure? And I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah,
It's
no.
just one of those, what's the big savings?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I do have a guess, but I'm not going to throw it out there.
It impresses me how they come up with these things with about 10% of the details.
Yeah.
So, that was a fun
Do our
subject.
majority of our teachers will move to the lifetime then?
Yeah, I think so. We've had, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10. This is kind of, you know better than I would. I know I've had about 5 to 10 kind of questions that have come my way, so I would bet 75% would move to the lifetime licensures, if I had to guess.
Okay. Any other questions? Thanks, Josh. Now we'll move on to our new business C, discussion of superintendent evaluation process.
Okay. So I put wanted this on the agenda. I put the current evaluation tool that you use in there, the current job description, and then I've also put the 2 different administrator standards in there that it's kind of based off of. If you look at the first one, it's the Wisconsin Educator Standards, the 7 Wisconsin standards they're called. That's what's currently being used. The second page is the Professional Standards for Educational Leaders 2015. The ISLIC standards are what those were previously known as. Those are the standards that Wisconsin used to endorse, and they currently endorse the 7 standards, but at the last large superintendent conference, DPI shared with everyone that they're going to be endorsing the Professional Standards for Educational Leaders 2015. So I put those in there. I don't know if that just as kind of a reference. And then if you look at the job description and the evaluation, I think the conversation that needs to be had at the board level is if you want to continue using this evaluation or if you're looking at a different evaluation. The tough thing with the district administrator evaluation is there's no mandated format for it, unlike any other position in public education. And when you I reached out to WASDA, the WASA, and WASB, the only resources that they give you are other evaluations from other school districts that are used within their districts. So some are what they locally decided upon. Others you kind of see a theme in them. So I'm guessing many have kind of emulated other districts or other evaluation tools, but pretty similar concepts or pretty similar. Not standards, but domains, I guess you could call them.
So basically, we have the freedom to create our own evaluation tool.
Yeah, which is, to be honest, a little scary. because when you look at boards, board members are truly the only ones that are not trained to deliver evaluations. But yeah, boards do have it's a local decision.
Why is that scary?
Well, because if you're not trained in something, to create something, to be untrained, and I'm not
Well,
saying
we've got
you
all these
specifically.
resources here that we could use to create our own
Yeah.
evaluation.
True.
Yeah, WASB also, they have a program that a board can go through to create both the job description and the evaluation. So that's one avenue we can have. But Pete, you gave me a copy of, back last year when we were going through this, you gave me a copy of an evaluation. Can you kind of tell me why you thought that would have been a good format in which to evaluate?
Well, it took a look at, like the 10 standards, and it used those kind of headings to break it down. It was the kind of the day-to-day job kind of things, and the things that I think as a board we're required to keep an eye on. So it was, staffing things and finances and curriculum instruction, and it had a similar kind of similar to these standards.
Is there a questionnaire that came with that? Sure.
No.
I found a couple that I've looked at that really follow this 10 standard, that they go through each of these areas and have little snippets. I mean, I know some of this eval from last year was hard because it's like, I don't know where I see that, because I see you here for 2 hours.
Twice a month.
Twice a month. And so I think maybe there is some room to look at something, but I mean, I think we need to still follow, his job description, maybe look at these 10. To me, the most feedback comes from the comments, and just kind of where we can give specific examples of where things go. I think that's helpful when you do the evaluation, and I think the formal one, like we talked last year, is a summary of what we say and is not every comment that the board says.
This one you did last year, then?
Yeah, this is the one we did. This is the one we've been doing
For 30 years.
since the beginning of time, I think. But it looks like this one's got a lot more detail, just looking over it quickly, the standards for the educational leaders, standard 1, mission, vision, and core values. I don't think many of those are touched in here, and some of the bullets that are in this one are probably scattered throughout the 10 standards, but is there by chance one that goes along with this someplace?
I can certainly look into it and try to find out.
I think the problem I had with this whole evaluation process is that we as a board are supposed to do an evaluation. And we're supposed to be, when you go to these seminars, we're supposed to be data driven. And we have no data. I mean, we're here 2 hours every 2 weeks. And the only information we have to make an evaluation is what you give us. And to me, that's like pretty biased. I mean, you can give us all the good stuff, but we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know what the relationships are with staff. We don't know what the relationships are with teachers. I've been trying to introduce the idea of why don't we get input from the teachers, from the support staff, from parents, to find out what kind of job you're doing. Let us know, give us that data, and then we can go from there. I mean, we are representing our community, and we're supposed to get as much data to make an accurate evaluation as possible. Is there a problem with that, to get information? I mean, you just said you did a survey of curriculum and you talked to all the teachers. Why couldn't they be given a survey as to how you're doing as an administrator and how things are operating here in our school?
Yeah, I think that was brought up when Guy Levitt was here. He felt it wasn't appropriate.
Why wouldn't it be appropriate?
I don't remember what he said.
But why
I don't
would-
remember either. We've had this conversation probably like 5 times in the last 5 years.
But
Of why
I'm
we
just-
don't,
why
does anybody
wouldn't it-
remember why we don't do that?
I think
It's your boss. You're going to tell him he's doing a good job. That's my opinion.
And I think, you know,
Not from
we
teacher,
talked about.
not from, if you don't have to give out your name and all that, I mean, if it's
Well,
anonymous.
Right.
No, but I
I
think there's
think
two
part of-
parts. Oh, go ahead, May.
Sorry, I think part of the hard part is it is no name given with it, and I think that's hard to follow. Sometimes if one teacher can just rip for whatever reason, and how do we know how they're coming at this? And is what they're saying even fair? Is it true? I mean, when you,
Well, I think if you take all the data, get all the surveys, and there's a pattern, there's few that, I mean, we can sort stuff out. I mean, it's not that hard to figure out.
And I think, similar to the 360 survey, I'd be more than happy to send a survey out and take that information and use it for professional growth on my own. I mean, I have no issue with that. I think that's a
Well, and
great
that's,
idea.
I think, what we talked about when Guy was here, was there's two parts. There's the statutory requirement for us to do an evaluation, and it needs to follow some sort of a standardized format. And then there's the professional growth, professional development piece of it, which could include surveying. And those were two different things. And one of them has to be submitted to DPI as part of our requirement, and one of them can be used simply for professional growth and us as a board to help with that. So I think they were two separate things is when we had those conversations. But what is required of us based on what are Josh's what's his job description, how he's doing with that, and then the other part of it is what kind of professional development or personal growth feedback.
And I'm saying, but you just told us that, as a board, we have the freedom to make our own evaluation. I think we should really explore something like that so we can get a better idea what's going on. I mean, seriously, when you give us all the information, it's like, how do I know that, this is all's good? I mean,
The information that I gave are it's not like feedback from staff. I mean, they're tangible, like the switch to Google. It was something that I made a decision, and as a district, we decided to move in that direction. So I don't know, if any of the evidence that I gave you as far as touching on the standards could be, misinterpreted, because it wasn't. I don't feel like any of it was more, any of my opinion. It was just what we did, or what the decisions I made, I guess.
Well, I suppose we don't have to decide anything today, but we should probably maybe decide if we want to put it on the future agenda and
Sure.
maybe in more specific terms of what we want to do, and we can address it.
Do you want me to explore some evaluations that are based off the professional standards for educational leaders, this one?
Yeah.
And see what we can...
Probably one that's preferably already Googleized then, too,
Okay.
for your own help.
Sounds good.
Anybody
and
else have any
I would like
thoughts?
to get one where we can get more input from staff, teachers, parents. I think we should do that. I mean, it says right here, the administration leads by facilitating the development, articulation, implementation, and stewardship of vision of learning that is shared by the school community. Talks about the word community is in here several times. Collaborating with families and community members, responding to diverse community interests and needs, and mobilizing community resources. I mean, those are all, we need the input from the community to find out how we're doing. Not only how you're doing, but us as a board. We get accused of, you just vote yes to everything. You guys don't ask enough questions. I mean, we need more input. I did not feel comfortable filling out that survey last year, based on what, That's why there's a lot of unknowns for mine.
Well, the thing is, I can see where you're coming from, Dave, if that's all you're doing is coming to the meetings twice a month, but being involved in the school district, you do touch upon probably all this stuff and get to see it firsthand.
know.
So I don't feel the same way that you do in regards to seeing all this stuff happening. So I just thought I'd share that with you.
Yeah, but people, as board members, come and talk to you, and they mention things, and they say things, and they say, how come you're doing this, or what's going on there, and I don't know, you know, because we're not allowed to, I mean, we were told earlier on that, you know, we have to go through the proper channels and everything, so it just seems like there needs to be more input.
I guess part of that also would be if we're getting asked questions, then we need to bring those questions here. So if you don't have the answer, to
Right.
either ask Josh or ask here. Yeah.
And I do,
Yeah.
things come up.
Right.
Because there was a period when I didn't have any of the kids in the school building, so I was getting the same thing that you're getting. Now that I have kids back in the district now, you're more in touch when you're in here all the time.
And is this something, every 2 years is a requirement, is this something we'll do every 2 years, or do we want to do it every year?
I was thinking every 5 years. Yeah, so it's legally mandated to do the first year of hire, and then every third year, I believe it is. So it's up to the board.
Am I wrong in thinking we've done it every year?
I've done it once since I've been here, but.
Yeah, I feel like I've done it every year I've been on the board.
Yeah.
I believe that's
we've
been
done it every
past
year.
practice, yeah. So, change isn't always a bad thing.
Oh, it doesn't matter. to
I'm
me,
just
Josh,
teasing.
But I would like to have the levity to put you on the spot.
So next step, I'll just take a look to see if WASB or WASDA have any examples or templates we can use to emulate that revolve around the professional standards for educators.
I think also one more thing, I think compiling the data and writing the final report should be done by the board and not by the administration.
Yeah, in my defense on that, you guys asked me to do that, so I did it. And then it was, and there was nothing that I mean, all of the information was written by you guys, so I didn't feel like there was any way that could be tampered.
It did make my job easier.
It's actually your job as the president to do that.
And to be honest, I didn't compile it. The Google
Yeah.
Google did it. I mean, I just converted it into the Google form, which I would suggest doing again, because then it takes a lot of work off your plate. It just compiles it all for you.
Yep.
But
All right, we'll add that to the future agenda
okay.
items list then. All right, any other comments? All right, then we'll move on to item D, discussion of board meeting requirements.
Okay. You guys asked me to look into board requirements as far as the number of meetings you attend tied to your compensation. I could not find anything. The only thing that I could find that was outside of the board policy, which it wasn't listed in board policy, was this document called "What Every New Board Member Needs to Know." But other than that, I don't know what handbook. If you guys have talked about a board handbook, I'm unaware of any board handbook other than the board policies 100.
I brought it up last week because I thought, we attend, 24 meetings a year, basically, and we're getting paid $2,600 a year for all this. And there's, sorry to say, but there are board members that didn't make it to a lot of meetings earlier on. But I think we should tie whatever we get from as board members to the attendance at the meetings. Divide it out by the number of meetings, and if we miss a meeting, we get docked that amount of money.
I disagree.
What happens if you go to some WASB thing? You're going to get compensated $100 for that, or if you
That
have
would be included, because we have to go to two of those meetings. Plus, we only have 22 during the year, so there's 24 meetings a year, so it's about $110 a month, a meeting.
or an expulsion hearing or something. So that's my opinion too.
Yeah, not only that, but then takes a little bit of work to be involved, to go to some of these activities that you otherwise probably wouldn't go to if you weren't on the board. So I think generally speaking, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself, is I didn't join up for the school board for the money.
Correct.
It's a public service
Then
that
it
I get
shouldn't
to
be a
provide.
problem that
So
if you miss a meeting, you don't get paid. I mean, that's our responsibility. If you sign up to be a board member and you get elected, you should be here at the meetings, you know? And yeah, there's a times when there's work or sickness or something, but, you know, Brent missed almost a third of the meetings. And I know
Well, there must be some thinking behind the fact that it only takes 3 people to form a quorum, so, and that's kind of the way it's set up, so is going to a meeting required? Is going to a meeting required to be a board member? I don't think that's the only requirement.
Okay. There's research, there's the time that we spend reviewing our packets, there's the time we go, you know, studying statutes and reading all the emails that we get. Yeah, but, you know, then we should be prepared for the meetings. I mean, you make a commitment as a school board member, you shouldn't just miss, oh, I can miss that one or this one, I'll still get my stipend. I think it gives us an incentive to be here, and
I'm just wondering if it's a real issue. I mean, we had a former board member with some family things, but other than that, I mean, I don't often see not everyone here, and when they aren't, it's not because I think they're just blowing it off. I just wonder if it's a real issue.
well, I'm just saying we can set a precedent or we can set an example. You know, we're here to do our job and we get paid for what we do, and if we're not here, we don't get paid.
Right.
You know, it's setting an example. It's setting a standard.
Yeah, but then the next thing we do is start docking people for being late.
No, that's not. That didn't bring that up. Why would you do that?
Well, why would you make this rule up that you're suggesting?
Because it's an.
Pull the board and
Yeah.
move on.
What do you guys think?
I don't think for every meeting, maybe, if I thought through it more, maybe say you need to be at least 80% every 6
Sure.
months or something. I
would
don't
make
think
more
it has to be at every meeting thing, but maybe we do want to say, just for accountability, that you're at 80% of the meetings every year. I mean, I know I schedule vacations around meetings,
I do too.
and maybe that's just something to get somebody thinking about the accountability for this, but I don't think you have to say every.
Yeah, I think there's a
Meeting.
professionalism of it that, you know, if you choose to run and you know what your commitment is, and if you're not here, it's because you don't have another choice. I mean, you got a sick kid, or you've got, you know, something that's not within your control. I don't know if that's, I mean, that's my thought too.
Well,
And I don't intentionally miss a meeting, you know.
The other part of it too is that I think we might be forgetting is we don't set the pay for the board members. That's set by the community at the annual meeting. So maybe it would be up to the community to come up with some type of a rule that's associated with our pay.
I mean, they did the training.
I mean, I think it's a given that you're here unless there's something pretty major that you're not.
And I'm pretty sure that, you know, we're all in the same place. I mean, I don't remember anybody, you know, not being here for a meeting for a long time. I just don't think it's a problem. So, Nettie, you say,
No, unless we really feel like we want to put the 90% or something in, but maybe that's something we decide at the annual meeting with the community.
Skip.
I agree. Leave
I
it the
agree.
same or leave it up to the public.
Leave it as is or have the public.
David?
I think we need to be more accountable and need to show up. And
Okay.
so.
That being said, then we will move on to the review of the coaching activities handbook.
Okay. So, last year, board requested that we develop a coach's handbook as a guideline for coaches and activities. Yep, down there.
Give Dale too.
Yep.
Grab that one for Dale. Thank you.
So this is, I'll say this a couple times, but this is just a rough draft. Oh, it's stapled. It's not in the. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, let's put this away.
So just a rough draft So just give you a kind of a background of how the process went. Myself met with Dale, Mr. Rosine a couple times, and then also met with Mrs. Funk. Is currently going through her admin, going through to get her admin license. So she had asked, she approached Mr. Gillis and myself to see if there was any things that she could be a part of, any committees that she could do to kind of fulfill some of those hours. So I graciously asked, or she graciously was put on the coaching activities handbook. So a huge thank you to Mrs. Funk.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Funk.
So what we'll do is we'll just go through this, and please know it's in rough draft form. We'll just kind of go item by item. Some of it is stuff that's already been established for years in the district, but kind of compiled in one area. Some stuff is brand new to the district, and we developed, as we were going through this process. So then we worked through kind of a rough draft template. Then we created a committee, coaches activities handbook committee. Met with that committee and had them kind of go through it, review it, get any information, any ideas that they saw as we went through it, and now it's in front of you guys. So after this, it'll go back to the handbook, the coaches handbook committee, kind of for a final review, and then it'll come back for the board for to be voted upon. So we'll start on page 2. You have the table of contents kind of all laid out. Page 3, we have the mission statement and core values that was board approved on July 25th, 2016. Then we have the Clear Lake Junior Senior High School song, which I even learned some things about Clear Lake going through this process. I learned our song, and that it's Illinois loyalty, Illinois loyalty. On page 4, you have the purpose of the handbook, which this will be revised yet, and we're kind of working through this. But the purpose, Clear Lake Junior Senior High School athletics and activities are an extension of the classroom and an integral part of the school's program of education. Athletics and activities have no inherent value as an educational activity without professional leadership, educational goals and objectives, and acceptable standards of behavior. Coaches and advisors play a vital role in the development of our students. This coaching handbook details the expectations and roles of the coaches/advisors to ensure that all students and coaches are successful. The purpose of this handbook is to be a resource for all coaches and advisors. So as we were going through this and compiling everything, it was really, I do think it's going to be beneficial to not only our veteran coaches, but also I wish I had something. I remember my first year coaching, having a document like this is a resource to go through. The next one is duties and responsibilities. I'm going to have Mrs. Funk share on that one.
Mr. Ernst was kind enough to let me take over a few of these. So, duties and responsibilities of coaches and advisors are to display admirable integrity at all times, while fostering the high goals of good sportsmanship, physical skills, and high ethical standards. The coach advisor needs to communicate with others, motivate staff and students, provide the initiative for program development, make decisions related to program operation, demonstrate interest in and aptitude for performing the responsibilities of the position. Coaches and advisors report to the activities director/building principal, as well as supervise other coaching personnel of activity. They also consult with the activities director or principal and are responsible for the student athlete. Overall, our Clear Lake Junior Senior High School's coaches and advisors should provide a program which operates within the educational philosophy of the school district to instruct all participating students in the skills of each activity, to encourage an appreciation for all values of discipline and sportsmanship, and increase the level of self-esteem.
Then next we have the job description. So this just kind of lays out the job description of a head coach, being responsible for the development of your activity on a system-wide K-12 basis, establish the fundamental philosophy, skills, and techniques to be taught by staff. 2 is to coordinate the specific activities program in accordance with regulations as prescribed or directed by, and then you have the coach's handbook, school admin, the Clear Lake Board Policy Handbook, the Lakeland Conference Constitution and Bylaws, and then the WIAA Constitution and Bylaws. 3, attend all coaching staff meetings as well as conference and WIA rules meetings unless specifically excused by the activities director. For the WIA, and some of this is from DPI, like this number 4, the WIA rules test pertaining to the specific sport. Score 70% or higher on a test. So when you're coaching, you just have to take a rules book test. 5, plan and schedule a regular program of practice and season. 6, plan and hold a parent meeting at the beginning of each season. 7, determine the system to be used in granting activity-specific awards and lettering. Share in writing with activity participants and parents prior to the start of the activity season. Number 7 is also done along with the activities director. Mr. Rosine is involved in that. Number 8, assign staff specific duties to supervise assignments and complete the proper evaluation at the end of the season. 9, make recommendations to the AD if concerning any coaching advising appointments. 10, help uphold the activity code for the Clear Lake School District and report any infraction of activity code to the activities director or principal. 11, serve as a liaison between the school's programming and community youth groups, offering support, guidance about fundamental skills, techniques, philosophies that are age appropriate and conducive to the program's growth and success.
More in the job description. Assist the AD in developing the schedule. Enforce all eligibility requirements, making sure no student participates in practice or contest unless clearance is granted from the AD office. 14 is provide proper safeguards for maintenance of all equipment and facilities and advise the AD when possible hazards may occur due to faulty equipment or facilities. Provide expectations, activity-specific rules, and regulations to each participant in writing. 16, assist the AD in developing the sport budget and be responsible for operating within those budget appropriations. 17, be accountable for all equipment, collect the cost of any equipment lost or not returned, arrange for issuing, storing, care, and reconditioning of equipment, and submit an annual inventory within 2 weeks after the conclusion of the activity season. 18, have prior approval for all fundraising through the principal with all paperwork on file before the fundraiser begins. Proper forms should be completed and monies deposited within established timelines. 19, all purchase orders or check requests must be approved by the AD prior to processing. Failure to follow this procedure could make the coach personally responsible for the bill. 20, be responsible for good public relations with media, booster clubs, parents, and officials. Supervise students from the time they report until the time they leave your activity and the building in which the activity occurs. 22 is emphasize safety precautions. Whenever an athlete is injured, be certain to give the injury proper attention, fill out the necessary forms, and notify the proper people. 23, complete certain end-of-the-season responsibilities in order to consider their coaching assignment finalized, including meeting with the AD for an end-of-the-season program review and evaluation. And finally, number 24 is complete assistant coach evaluation for each paid assistant once per season. Discuss evaluation with the assistant and then turn in the evaluation form to the athletic director.
Before I go on to the assistant coach, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to interrupt us. Assistant coach, adhere by the regulations, same as the head coach. Number 2, have a willingness and capability to assist the head coach in leading the program in other areas as directed. Report directly to the head coach and work under their direction to implement and teach skills of the activity. 4, assume the duties of the head coach in his or her absence. 5, have an awareness of facilities, equipment, inventory, and purchasing issues. Communicate with the head coach concerning any facet of this activity program. 6, take the WIA rules tests pertaining to their specific activity and score 70% or higher. And then number 7, carry out other duties as directed by the head coach.
We also wanted to include a definition for a volunteer coach because we know that volunteer coaches are very appreciated and also very necessary and around. So a volunteer coach basically is a non-paid coaching individual who has knowledge and is interested in helping develop that program. The volunteer coaches must be approved by the activities director or principal and also through the head coach or advisor. They should also be cleared through a background check. They're held to the same level of ethical standards and accountability as those who are paid, and they can be terminated at any time.
Okay, then on page 7 we have the conference affiliation, which is going to be a working document. It changes from year to year depending on the sport, but that just gives you the breakdown of each sport. Page 8 continues with the conference. Page 9 gives you our coaches information. Just lists out the head coaches right now, the different athletic programs that we have, the extracurricular programs that we have. On top of page 10 continues with extracurriculars, and then the administrative team. Page 11.
On page 11, we included the student athlete code of conduct. It goes from pages 11 through page 19. This is something that has already been given out to the students and the athletes. Basically, the students received this in their handbook. It's already been word-proofed. We just included it so that coaches can see and use for their reference what's expected of students and athletes.
Is there a coach's code of conduct that they have to sign?
We'll get to that, yeah. So if you go to page 20, we have the coaches evaluation. The head coaches get evaluated by Mr. Rosine, our activities director, at the end of each season. And then all head coaches complete a self-evaluation and are evaluated by that athletic director once per year. We'll get to the appendices D and E are the two evaluation forms that we use there at the end of the document. And then we have this is new, middle page 20, it's the disciplinary action of a coach / advisor. This was extremely difficult, both for myself when I was working through it, and then meeting with Mrs. Funk and Mr. Rosine, and then once it eventually went to the coach's handbook committee. This is where I think the meat of tonight's conversation will come. But the disciplinary action may be taken on a coach / advisor at any level of sports activities in the Clear Lake School District, based upon the breakage of rules in this handbook or behavior becoming unbecoming of a coach / advisor. Depending on the severity of the violation, actions will be taken in the following ways. A, first offense will result in a verbal reprimand and document of offense. B, second offense may result in written letter of reprimand with district administrator's discretion. C, third offense may result in a letter of written reprimand with the district administrator's discretion and or suspension from coaching / advisor assignment. And then D, fourth offense may result in the removal from the coaching / advisor assignment. Disciplinary action will be cumulative throughout the academic year from one year to the next. One calendar year without violations will return the coach to the next lowest level on the disciplinary process. Events that are determined by the activities director and or the administration to be of a severe nature may automatically skip to a higher level of offense and disciplinary action. Any coach ejected from an event or reprimanded by WIA will automatically move to the second offense if no previous offenses have been registered against him or her to the next level. A person shall not have the ability to return to any coaching position if said person is removed from that position from either school board action or the result of an illegal action regarding the school and or the students. Do you have any questions on that?
On the next page, page 21, just goes through the appeals process. The coach has the right to appeal to the Board of Education if the coach is in question does not agree with the decision rendered for a disciplinary action. All appeals must be in writing to the superintendent within 2 working days of the decision. The Board of Education will convene at the next scheduled board meeting for a hearing on the case, and the decision of the board will take place after the hearing is done. The decision of the school board shall be final. Responses to all appeals shall be communicated in the form of a meeting between the coach and the board, followed by the board sending a formal letter to the coach stating their decision.
Equipment inventory. The head coach of each sport will issue necessary equipment. The students will not be issued equipment for a sport that they have not turned in any equipment from a previous sport or have not paid previous bills owed to the school. All equipment will be properly stored upon completion of a practice and a season. Equipment room and locker room shall be cleaned after the end of the sports season. Head coaches of a sport are responsible for the following: A, having students properly wear equipment at all time. B, making sure that the return and care of the equipment is properly administered. C, having all equipment issued to an athlete returned to the coach at the end of the season. D, turning a bill into the office for replacement costs of equipment when an athlete fails to turn in the equipment for an activity at the end of the season. E, making sure athletic equipment is to be worn when representing the school or at events. F, having locker room and weight room neat and orderly. G, having equipment rooms locked at all times when in use. And H, checking all doors to the facilities and storage areas to make sure that they are locked and all lights are turned off. Notification of game meet activity. We're in the process of creating that. We just switched over to a new program. No, I'm sorry, that's not that. Notification of game, and we're just in the process of, we don't have anything in there yet, so Mr. Rosine and myself will work on getting that in there. Because every sport is a little different. There's a couple new programs for different sports that utilize different things. Transportation. Transportation should be scheduled 2 weeks in advance for all contests through the district office secretary. Number 2, coach/advisor should call the transportation director the day prior to confirm scheduled departure time. 3, all buses and vehicles are to be returned in the same condition in which they left. 4, coach/advisor are to communicate leave times with the athletic director and building secretary. If changes are made to the schedule, departure, or pickup time, communication should be made to the athletic director and building secretary to provide sufficient time for communication to be relayed via school messenger and or the school Facebook page. 6, all students are to be transported via school vehicle unless a parent guardian signs a parent guardian sign-out sheet at the end of a competition. Parents, guardians should sign for their own student only. Let's switch that. 7, students will not drive school-owned vehicles under any circumstances. And 8, coaches, advisors must have 2 adults at all times in the vehicle when transporting an individual student.
The next section is about practice sessions. We decided to put something in writing, even though much of what's said has already been past practice, but it just hasn't been written anywhere. Number 1, students must be supervised by the coaches and advisors who are in charge during all school hours, during all school designated practices, whether the activity occurs before or after school hours, or attending and traveling to and from games or activities. Saturday and vacation practices may be held at the coach's discretion. The WIAA requires at least 24-hour rest period after 6 consecutive days of contact with student athletes, including those competition days. Number 3, Sunday practices should be avoided, if at all possible, unless there is a competition on the following Monday. Approval from the principal and athletic director are required prior to practice being held. Should a student miss a Sunday practice for religious reasons, no disciplinary action should be taken for the non-attendance of that practice. Number 4, all Wednesday practices shall end no later than 5:15 p.m. and no penalty shall be enforced for missing practice because of any religious instruction.
And Mr. Rosine, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of been an unwritten rule in the district.
Number 5, the coach will determine participation of an athlete if prevented from participation, such as injuries, absences, academics, behaviors, etc., as already stated in the beginning of season coaches' expectations meeting. And number 6, practice schedules or practice calendars will be shared with the athletic director and high school office prior to the beginning of the season.
Top of page 23. This has changed, kind of changed the game for education as a whole, but it's definitely changed for coaching, the technology and communication. There's so many different programs and apps out there that are available to us. So we have something in here that just kind of gives some guidance on what our philosophy is in the district. So 1, any and all student and parent communication shall be made in a professional and pertinent manner. Communication with students is to be made in a group setting platform. Example is Remind, which I believe our volleyball program uses right now. Does football as well?
No, volleyball.
What's that?
Like softball too.
Softball.
We even have our Spanish club set up.
Oh, do you? Oh, okay.
What's Remind?
It's an app where it's a group setting app where you can
Like a
remind.
group text.
Yeah, it's not it eliminates the one-to-one option for communication. Number 3, communication shall not be made on an individual or private platform. 4, coaches, advisors should not be connected to student via social media. And 5, communication with the WIA must abide by the following steps. Step 1, if a coach, parent, or player has a question, direct the question first to the athletic director. 2, athletic director should provide response if he or she knows the correct answer. If the athletic director is not knowledgeable, athletic director will consult with WIA materials or possible answer, or contact the WIA for assistance. And then step 3, once an answer is obtained, the response should be communicated with the coach, athlete, and parent, either verbally or written format. Keys to the success of this approach.
So you can't call coach up and ask him what time the game is tonight. So is that how I'm reading that?
Yeah, I think the intention was questions pertaining to like WIA guidance, so we could reword that a little bit. So if you had a question regarding like eligibility or stuff that needs to be directed to WIA, it should be going instead of we were trying to eliminate coaches or parents from directly going to the WIA director. They've asked that it goes through the athletic director.
But
So
Greg, you're asking about number 3 there, just direct communication?
Yeah, communication is not to be made on an individual private platform.
I think that, sir, if I may speak.
yeah.
I think the intent of that is to have not coaches individually send communications
students
out to players, but it's as a group. More like Mr. Stern said, to get rid of the one-to-one contact with players and coaches. But not necessarily, the other way around.
Okay, so the kids can still call coach up if they need to.
Yeah, and then the expectation would be the coach would communicate to the kids that all communication happens in a group format, just to eliminate any inappropriate, potentially inappropriate behavior. But yeah, number 3 can be reworded. Okay. Canceling and rescheduling of events. We haven't finished that yet, so that's just in the works. So top of page 24.
This section is about overnight stays. If there should be an overnight stay for any team or club. All competitions and events requiring overnight stays must be discussed, coordinated, and approved in advance by the admin. At least one coach or advisor must be with students at the hotel or motel at all times. Coaches are responsible for assigning rooms to the team members. Curfew time should be established for all team members, and coaches are responsible to see that their students are not disruptive to other guests. Number 5, any extra room charges will be paid by the student at checkout, such as room service, phone use, damaged movies, etc. Number 6, if students do not conduct themselves appropriately, the coaches or advisors may contact parents' guardians to be returned home at the student's expense. If such action is necessary, the coaching staff must notify the Clear Lake School District administration. And number 7, students and parents' guardians should sign and return the overnight stay form, which is Appendix M, to the coach or advisor before travel.
And then middle page 24, the coaching acknowledgement agreement. This is going to be taken out of here. It's going to be attached to just the coaching contract itself. So when coaches sign their contract, it's going to be on that rather than in the handbook.
So Dave, is that what you were asking about before?
Well, the kids have to sign a pledge. Is there a pledge that the co-curricular pledge?
What
There's
page
some-
are you looking at?
At 19?
Page 18.
19?
19.
And there should be something that the coaches have to sign too. I mean, in overnight stays, it doesn't say anything about the coaches acting inappropriately.
Do you think that putting a pledge in the handbook and having it signed in the handbook would be beneficial?
For the coaches?
Yes,
to
for the
sign?
coaches.
I think so. I mean, we have expectations of our kids, we should have expectations of our coaches.
There is a code of ethics.
But there's no place for a signature where the coach acknowledges that and says he pledges to.
Well, this is going to be similar to like a teacher's handbook where everything in it they're kind of signing off on, the handbook itself.
Maybe we could even put a pledge at the very end and have the coaches sign for the whole thing, including all appendices.
On page 31, there's the National Federation of High Schools 14 legal duties of a coach that we didn't create these. This was something that we just took from the NFHS that just lists out the 14 legal duties of a coach. So you have the duty to plan, the duty to supervise, duty to assess athletes' readiness for practice and competition, duty to maintain safe playing conditions, duty to provide safe environment, duty to instruct properly. 7 is duty to match athletes. 8 is duty to condition properly. 9, duty to warn. 10, duty to ensure athletes are covered by insurance, injury insurance. 11, duty to provide emergency care. 12, duty to design a proper emergency response plan. 13, duty to provide proper transportation. And 14, duty to select, train, and supervise coaches. And then on the next page, page 33, is the NFHS Code of Ethics. Is that kind of what you're...
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Question on page 6, volunteer coach. A volunteer coach is must approved by the athletic director or principal and through the head coach or advisor. I don't know why I can't read right now. All volunteer coaches must, well, it's because there's a typo there, must be approved by the activities director or principal and through the head coach or advisor. Should the board be one of the check marks in that sentence as well?
I would lean towards no. I mean, unless every time we get a volunteer, you would want to be board approved. But I would, to be honest, I would trust that it comes out of the athletic director's office.
Everybody's in agreement? Okay.
So go to page 25, WIA rules at a glance. I'm not going to go through all those. Those are just pulled from the WIA webpage. And we can go to page 31. We talked about the 14 legal duties. Page 32 is continuation of those duties. Page 33 is the Code of Ethics. The function of a coach is to educate students through participation in interscholastic competition. An interscholastic program should be designed to enhance academic achievement and should never interfere with opportunities for academic success. Each student should be treated with the utmost respect, and his or her welfare should be considered in decisions by the coach at all times. According to the following guidelines for coaches have been adopted by the NFHS Board of Directors. So that's just ultimately saying that they're a student first and an athlete second. Then it goes through, the coach shall be aware that he or she has tremendous influence for either good or ill on the education of the student, and thus shall never place the value of winning above the value of instilling the highest ideals of character. The coach shall uphold the honor and dignity of the profession in all personal contact with students, officials, athletic directors, school administrators, the state high school athletic association, the media, the public. The coach shall strive to set an example of the highest ethical and moral conduct. The coach shall take an active role in prevention of drug, alcohol, and tobacco abuse. The coach shall avoid the use of alcohol and tobacco products when in contact with players. The coach shall promote the entire interscholastic program in school and direct his or her program in harmony with total school program. The coach shall master contest rules and shall teach them to his or her team members. The coach shall not seek an advantage by circumvention of the spirit letter of the rules. The coach shall exert his or her influence to enhance sportsmanship by spectators, both directly and by working closely with cheerleaders, pep club sponsors, booster clubs, and administrators. The coach shall respect and support the contest officials. The coach shall not indulge in conduct which would incite players or spectators against the officials. Public criticism or officials or players is unethical. The coach should meet and exchange cordial greetings with the opposing coach to set the correct tone for the event before and after each contest. The coach shall not exert pressure on faculty members to give students special considerations. And finally, the coach shall not scout opponents by any means other than those adopted by the league and or state high school athletics association. Is that kind of what you were looking for, Dave?
Well, I think that if the kids are signing something, then they should get something from the coaches that says this is how we'll conduct ourselves.
Yep. Which I feel it is. That signature page will be part of that contract, which will reference this handbook.
Is there a way you can, do the kids have to, you said this is a separate section that the kids have to sign?
Yep. They sign at the end of the this athletic code.
Right.
But they don't have a contract. They're not employed by the district. So similar to like a teacher where they sign off on their contract that references the handbook and everything in it as the contract. It would do the same as this.
Well, couldn't you put like this, I mean, just these 2 pages here?
What pages are you looking at?
The 14 duties of a coach and the ethics.
Okay.
Have the coaches sign that and when the kids sign their thing, so the coaches sign this and say this is how we're going to treat each other.
I guess my point would be if the signature page is attached to the contract, then it would encompass all of the handbook and not just those 2 pages.
I know, but it'd be nice the kids. I mean, when they sign that, do they get a copy of the pledge, or do they just go on file?
They sign it, and it's the school keeps it.
Mm-hmm. And just a way of communicating to the parents that and the kids, this is what we expect from our coaches.
Maybe instead of having them sign a separate page, the coaches could be expected to include those pages, the ones that we're talking about at their beginning of the season meeting. And when they're communicating with parents, what their job is, they hand those out to the parents and say, this is what you can expect from me as your coach or advisor.
Right.
That way it could be clearly communicated verbally and in writing, but the written sign-off on receiving it is included in the coach and advisor contract and not a separate pledge.
Well, I think it needs to be communicated between parents, teachers, or kids and coaches and parents. So
I think a good way to do that would probably be at the beginning of the season meeting. We have, in another appendix, we have another checklist of things that are encouraged to be done during the entire year, during, after each activity season.
Is bullet 4 on page 33, does that include when they take groups down to Madison or to state tournaments in Green Bay or whatever?
Sorry,
I would think it would the 4th bullet on page 33.
4th bullet, page 33.
On page 33.
My interpretation would be anytime you are responsible for the athletes.
Yeah.
Anytime you are, I guess not that you're getting paid, because you're getting paid, it's a salary pay, but anytime you're on the clock, I guess, for lack of better terms, that would be my interpretation. Whenever you're responsible for students, that your behavior reflects what's in here. If you're not, then I would consider that you're not part of the school district at that time. You're still employed, but you're not on the clock, I guess.
So you're saying state tournaments are on the clock?
If we have qualifying kids and they are responsible for kids down at the state tournament.
take seniors
But if,
they're not in it, they just take seniors down to state tournament with a school van.
okay, then I would say yes.
On the clock.
Yep. But if, if we have a staff member that goes down to be a spectator and
Yeah.
they're on their own,
I'm saying specifically a group of their players, not maybe all of them, it's a
Yep.
handful.
Mr. Rosine and I met last year or the year before to discuss that one because I did find out that there was, that we would, once in a while there would be a van taken and kids taken. And we communicated with those coaches, anybody that takes a school van and there are kids along, they're ultimately kind of on the clock, I guess, for lack of better terms. So the behavior during that time would be, would follow these code of ethics, in my opinion. Does that make sense? Okay.
Before we get to the appendixes, just for point of clarification, I know a lot of the coaches do camps and clinics and other things beyond their normal contracted time. Where does that fit in here? As far as, is everything that's going to be included in here then when you're doing any of those kind of things, is that included?
Yeah.
Because I think that's often like out of season, or it may, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, I do think, with athletes or athletics in general, it's changed from really there is no in-season, off-season anymore. It's almost, 24/7, 365 days a year. So my take or my interpretation would be anytime you're responsible for kids, even if it's a camp type setting, if you are taking kids and you're responsible for those individuals during that time, that's when you are required to follow these code of ethics. Because there are so many camps and different things, and the coaching contract isn't set up during a certain time frame, the expectation for coaches, has evolved, I think. Number 34, Mr. Rosine, feel free to hop in on this one. Mr. Rosine evaluates each head coach at the end of each season. He gives them this assessment or this evaluation tool. They fill out a self review on that column that says coach. They kind of go through everything, and then Mr. Rosine meets with them and they discuss kind of each component. The whole intention of this is to create dialogue for hopefully improvement in conversation between the head coach and the athletic director. Anything to add on that? No. Page 37 is the assistant coach evaluation. Like we referenced earlier, the head coach is responsible for evaluating the assistant coach. We recognize that not all of our head coaches are teachers, nor have they gone through the training to evaluate like teachers have with the state mandated evaluation. So it's a little bit of a different style. It's condensed quite a bit, but it still fosters that dialogue between the head coach and the assistant coach. Page 38, this is what Mrs. Funk was referring to. This really is a nice document, in my opinion, for head coaches. Whether you're a veteran coach that struggles remembering things, or you're a brand new coach that's never coached before, it just kind of is a reference for different things that are good kind of best practices throughout preseason. Gives you a list of things. Preseason parent-athlete meeting. Then on page 39 is the during the season checklist, the daily checklist, and then postseason. And having been a head coach, even if you do it for years, there's always things that you forget as a head coach. That this is nice to have on setting parent meetings up, to organizing your camps, communication, to awards ceremonies at the end of the year. So just a reference guide. Page 40 is the injury and accident form.
So this we included as another appendix. We've already been using this within our school district, but essentially if a student were to be injured in whatever activity they're participating in, the advisor or coach needs to fill this out. It's nice to have it on file.
And it's currently what we use right now
Quick question on Appendix F. Why does it say optional here?
On appendix what?
F, page 38.
'Cause page 38 is just, it's just an optional checklist as a reminder guide sheet for coaches to use throughout the year to remember things.
So the banquet would be optional?
No, this isn't, this is just a sheet that helps you remember things.
It's not like they're going to turn this sheet into
No,
the AD.
it's just a reference sheet to make sure that they've done everything. So the sheet itself is optional, not the pieces or components within it. Just a checklist. Page 40, concussion information. We have, if we would have put it all in here, this document would be, I think, double in length. So a link is going to be inserted in there for coaches to reference all of the information pertaining to concussions.
And then on page 41, we have the travel release form as appendix I. So if a student is not traveling home with school district transportation, then it's expected that their parent or guardian would be filling out one of these pieces of paper. No, that's formatting off for you.
Yeah, formatting's off.
A little off.
Is there an end of the year parent survey regarding coaching? And
I don't know.
No, not that I can remember we've ever had anything.
would that be something you want to include?
Would a coach want to do that on their own just so they can get feedback from the parents on how they did?
Yeah, I don't know.
That might be something we could put in the optional checklist.
Trying to think. I'm just trying to go back in my mind and think if I've seen anybody do
For parents.
What about,
I can't think of
like,
it.
Chris, like stuff you send out to the elementary survey stuff? Where do you do that on, I guess?
We used to do it on SurveyMonkey. I guess you do it on
Yeah.
Google.
That'd be pretty
A
simple.
coach could put something like that together.
Send an email out to everyone.
Or even the athletic director might want to know. I mean, again, use data to make an evaluation of your own, you know. The more data, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Then on the bottom of page 42, did we do overnight form, Mrs.
We
Funk?
have not done that one yet. So essentially, this overnight form is what we are asking parents, guardians, and also students and the coach advisor to sign before they were to take students overnight. So essentially, it says to represent yourself and your school community respectfully, to dress considerately, use proper language and manners, no use of drugs, alcohol, or tobacco permitted, no card playing for money, no visiting between males and females before a room curfew. That one we need to say after room curfew at any time, yeah. Number 5, be in your hotel room after curfew.
I said that.
That one needs to be before, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we got to change that one to before. So be in your hotel room before curfew each evening. Be dressed and out by the designated time each morning. Recognize the rights and comforts of others with respect to noise, language, general conduct, and recognize the authority of the supervisors and group leaders. Keep advisor chaperones aware of your location at all times. So then it says, I have read the above rules. I understand them and agree to abide by them at all times. I understand the authority of the supervisors and advisors in charge of the trip, and I understand that any infraction of these rules will be sufficient cause for my participation in the trip to be terminated and for me to be sent home at my expense. I think essentially these were adopted from what Mrs. Schott has been using for FFA overnight for all of her national conventions and travel within FFA. We just adopted it to fit a larger group.
And then Appendix K is emergency procedures. These were procedures that WI has just recently communicated out as procedures for emergencies procedures during an
There's been a big push with
extracurricular.
WIA and I'm not sure if you're aware, but all coaches have to be at the varsity level, CPI, AED, and first first aid certified now. So we started that process this year. We've had 2 different trainings with Mal, the athletic trainer, getting all of our coaches first certified. So there's a big push, and this is a new chart that they came out, and you'll see something to lay out emergency action plan with whether it be practices or games. You know, when we always think about plans, we're thinking about big events, but just even in practices, you know, there might be one coach there, so what happens when the one coach goes down? Just having a plan for the kids to react and involve the kids.
So that's where we're at. I'd like to say thank you to both Mrs. Funk and Mr. Rosine for all the time that they put into helping me craft this. Then also, you know, as you read through it, you can definitely see how much involvement our athletic director is involved in so many of the different components within this handbook. And I think you see it more firsthand when you're inside the building. So huge thank you to Mr. Rosine for all the time and effort that he does just in his role in general. I think activities director is a tough role to do, and it's a time-consuming role that is definitely not a 9-to-5 job.
What did we have before this?
We didn't have anything, but I do think we had, you know, a lot of these pieces were just compiled and put in. I mean, some of it, like we referenced, were developed by us, and we looked at other coaching handbooks around the state, and then there's a chunk of it that we were already using in practice, but kind of put everything in one document.
It seems we should have had this years ago. But
Yeah, I do think it's going to be very nice to have for coaches. I think it's going to be a nice reference guide for them.
I think you did a good job.
Thanks.
I think one of the cool things about this, when Mr. Ernst was doing the research about districts across the state that already have a handbook for their advisors, he found one, and it was Kimberly, Wisconsin. And so there really isn't much out there for both dual athletics and for activities. So I think that's pretty neat about this handbook, is that it does cover just what to do in the capacity of an advisor when you're working closely with kids.
Good stuff.
So I guess from this point, you know, I know it was a lot to go through, but we'll go through and you know, kind of make a couple changes if you guys want to take the next, you know, 2 weeks, or even maybe I can put it out not at the next board meeting, but the following one, to give you a good amount of time to really go through it, and then give us any more feedback that you have or suggestions that you'd like us to consider.
Maybe we could bring it to the board retreat to go over it again.
Okay, sounds good. And then after that, it'll go back to the coaching committee, and then back to the board for kind of the final stamp of approval.
Sounds good. So then we'll just put that on the future agenda then. All right, any other comments, questions? All right, then we'll move on to our superintendent notes.
Oof.
Mr. Ernst.
Done enough talking. All right. A lot of, you know, things I was going to talk, I've already touched on the in-service with the guaranteed and viable curriculum. We really are moving in the right direction, I feel like, with our district. I'm excited about it, even though it's not, I don't consider it an exciting topic. I'm excited about the outcome and kind of the end game with it. So then I also referenced our technology committee. We're going to be bringing to the board our one-to-one initiative and what that really means. I know a lot of people in districts and superintendents say one-to-one, but every district, it kind of means a little bit different. And for us, K-12, from K all the way, or pre-K all the way to our seniors, it's going to mean something different. So we talked about it as a technology committee about what we wanted, what direction we want to move. But then also, when we're moving in that direction, what do we need, and what will the teaching staff need in order to make that happen? What supports and professional development do they need? So that's going to be coming soon. So you'll have more of that information. I'm very excited about that, because I think that is something that I think our students. I know I've talked about this when we kind of transitioned to Google. We have high school kids that haven't even accessed their email, and I think that's that's starting to change, and you can see it in classrooms, and I'm excited where we're headed as a district, and I think the more we can get more opportunity to get technology in the hands of students, the better. And again, we've communicated that we're not looking to replace curriculum, we're just looking to enhance or supplement the curriculum. We have football doing extremely well, have yet to be beat. And future items, we have Friday, let me back up, we have volleyball on Tuesday at Northwood, cross-country conference meet at Shell Lake, so their official first conference tournament for Clear Lake at Shell Lake. Then we have a home volleyball game at Cameron on Thursday, and then Friday we have a home football game against Pepin. And then next week, the week of the 16th, we have regionals for volleyball on the 17th, home, and hopefully, fingers crossed, on the 19th.
No.
Oh, no.
That'll be away. We got
Thank
5
you.
seats.
Okay.
Just one home game.
Thanks, Mr. Rosine. And on the 18th, let me back up, is the early release teacher in-service. So again, Ms. Stratton from CISA is coming in to do some work with the Guaranteed and Viable Curriculum. And that's all I have.
Good. Then we'll move on to our future agenda items. Anybody have any new things they'd like to talk about?
I do have one. I think we're going to have a presentation from Mr. Crawford regarding the advanced placement presentation and proposal to the board on what that'll look like. And then also, hopefully, the final budget for approval.
Okay. Anything else? Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned.